There we go. There we go. Hey guys, so we have gotten to the point on this character where I can confidently say that we can probably one-shot every single boss in the game. As you saw in the clip before, we one-shot Xesht, which has about like 34 to 35 million health, and that's about the same as tier 4 Arbiter as well. So we have officially gotten ourselves to a point where we can just kill everything in the game with our Molten Barrier. Now, the one question is, are we doing a little bit too much damage? And yes, that is a thing, because our build right now is focused on split between main hand doing AoE and doing map farming, and offhand doing bossing. And my question is, am I doing too much damage on my bossing side of things? And can I pull some nodes off, let's say like of these ones, to go and make more nodes for our main AoE farming build or map farming build? Because that's definitely where this build struggles the most compared to the bossing, which everything just dies in one shot, right? So that's kind of something I still need to explore, but I feel like we're at a point in the build where I can say it's pretty much in its final form. And this is kind of a last video for like a full build guide, just to let you guys know where it goes. I still have plans for this build going forward, like things like, you know, maybe swapping it to energy shield, because I do think armor is still in not so great of a place, and other things to explore around that. But I would say that we are kind of in the final forms of the build, and I'm confident in saying that there's not really too much that we can do to really optimize it. So let's start from the top. Right now, I am a level 91 Infernalist with 366 Strength, 154 Intelligence, and 28 Dexterity. You may notice if you watched the previous video that we have dropped our Dexterity a significant amount and given ourselves a lot more Strength. And that's partly because of a big mistake that we made on stream and gave into peer pressure and kind of ruined our weapon that was really good and made it so we didn't need that much stat. Ball with less one weapons on are no balls. Oh, I am a poor boy. I cannot afford to gamble these things. Ball your weapons and I'll use my prime sub. Oh my god, please. Please. It lost the elemental damage. It lost the elemental damage. We lost 100,000 damage. Which is why we're using a much worse weapon than before. But that's besides the point, and this build still works. But because of that, we have made a couple changes to your gems, and I think that for our skill gems, this actually ends up being better for our setup, but also a little bit more accessible for other people. Now, we have significantly increased our survivability with our current build right now. We are at 6.5k ES with 3.7k HP, but reserved it's 934. That really doesn't matter too much. And we have 1.461 or 1.461k mana, and then we also have 249 spirit. Now, our character is, of course, a witch taking a low life build, and as a result, we have gotten a mind over matter to help us out with our defenses. We also have 64 or 63% armor. We have 25% block, same as before, and we've rounded our resistances quite a bit more. There's still more optimization we can do. As you can see, cold and lightning are pretty overcapped, which is not a terrible thing because you can get elemental weakness and that could kind of destroy your character. But I would still like to try and find ways to get chaos resistance to be higher. But that's our character at the moment. And when it comes to skill gems, we have gotten our Magma Barrier to 5 link, but to be honest, I really can't find too much that I really even want to do with our Magma Barrier when it comes to, like, I don't know, increasing the amount of damage that we do in mapping. Now for bossing, we can add this close combat one right here, which is really, really nice. But to be honest, I'd say close combat is really not necessary. And what I end up doing is I just run with this setup right here with Fire Mastery, Fire Infusion, Magnified Effect, Elemental Focus, and Ambush, because what will end up happening is Ambush is going to increase the amount of damage that we do in general to everything, because it'll increase our crit by a lot. But also on top of that, this way we don't have to keep swapping out Ambush and Magnified Effect when we go and do our one-shotting build. All we need to do is swap out our weapon and our loadout, and that's all we need to do. But yeah, if you guys have any other suggestions for more damage for our AoE build, leave it down below. At the moment, I just don't really see anything, and honestly, we don't really need anything because we just kind of one-shot anyways with our current level of things. We have Blast Me set up now, and we have Flammability and Heightened Curse. I mentioned that we wanted to get this into our build eventually, and because we did get rid of Power or Charge Infusion, we were able to slot this in. Shield Charge, we have Martial Tempo and Stomping Ground. We got rid of Coaling Strike just because of dexterity requirements. If you have more dexterity, you can slot that back in. We have Sub Blink with Ingenuity. We have Eye of Winter with the same setup as before. Brutality, Control Destruction, Unleash. That way we don't do any damage to bosses when we are trying to one-shot them, and use this for our crit. Grim Feast, same as before, but we have Precision, Herbalism, and Vitality. These were two things that I added with the recent changes because we are starting to get a lot more energy shield and our life potion, and we did add Eternal Youth to our build, just doesn't heal our energy shield much. So we added Herbalism to get more energy shield heals, and Vitality, just, I don't know. We also added Zealot's Oath, which makes it so that we can now recover energy shield with regeneration, which really isn't that much. You really don't even need to take Zealot's Oath, and Vitality is still good actually because we use Life Tap for our Resonating Shield. So because of what we have right now with Eternal Youth and our setup, the life doesn't recover naturally like it did before, right? It kind of recovers like energy shield. You wait for a while for it to start recovering, but with Vitality, it actually just starts recovering the moment you stop pressing the button. So that's kind of nice, on top of it regenerating our energy shield as well. That's why we slot it there. You don't need it. And then Resonating Shield, I think it's pretty much the same as before. Unbreakable, Mobility, Inspiration to get less cost because we do use our life for it, and then Life Tap to make it so that we can use it despite having MOM, because sometimes the monsters get us through our mana, and then we have no mana to use Resonating Shield, and we just get caught with our pants down. You can use Active Block in that situation, but in the heat of the moment, a lot of times you can't really or won't really swap. You'll just try to keep pressing Resonating Shield with no avail, right? So that's kind of why we have this setup here. And we still have our Ancestral Totem, Warrior Totem setup with Sunder, just in case we ever find a mob that, you know, is giving us a really, really hard time because it's just giving us no blocking opportunities. I rarely ever use this, but sometimes we get in a case where there's like no trash mobs around and then we're left with a rare in a map and it just doesn't give you a blocking opportunity. So that's why we have this here still. You can link it with more things to make it stronger, like, you know, maybe like not Brutality, like Heft and things like that to just give it more damage, but for the most part we don't have to use this. So those are our gem setups, right? And our Magma Barrier right now, tooltip DPS with our AoE boss mob farming mapping build, it is 643,000 per use. And then with our other setup, with our what is it called, our one-shot setup, we are at 1 million tooltip DPS. Well, actually, we can swap this and have it higher, right? 1.67 million, because this weapon has our increased elemental damage with attacks. So it is quite a bit higher when we have that. So it's looking pretty dang strong right now. We are definitely one-shotting everything in the game at the moment. But yeah, this is our current setup with our gems. And then for our tree, we did, as I mentioned before, make quite a few adjustments. So first things first, before in the old tree, we went down this way, right? And I still have it set up in our max roll to kind of path through everything and get over here. because I don't know how we were supposed to add a from dark or from nothing jewel that we got into max roll. If you guys know, let me know. That way I could put it into the max roll guide. But anyways, I want to make the max roll guide more of an accessible guide for most people anyways that don't want to invest in like a from nothing jewel. Even though this isn't too expensive, I got this for about 2 div. But yeah, because of the from nothing jewel, we actually ended up saving about 6 points, 5 to 6 points on our tree. So we were able to slot those things elsewhere. And we also took off this one right here, damage versus full life, because 20% increased damage on full life is just not that much in the grand scheme of things. So we kind of took that off of there. And then we also took nearsighted. I think I could definitely not use this. It doesn't seem to help all that much. We still have, like, the thing is with this character, I don't know why, regardless of how much accuracy I give it, and regardless of how much accuracy we have on our tooltip, it just doesn't seem like it's, you know, very good. At one point, I was at 98% accuracy within 2 meters, and it still just missed a lot. So I might end up taking this off eventually and re-slotting it somewhere else for more survivability. Probably something like this node right here, which is one we want to go into anyways and not use this one. Because like I would ideally like to use this one over this one, but our current spirit costs just don't allow for that, because this will reduce our maximum life, which in turn reduces our spirit and makes it so we can't run some of our spirit gem. So we need to get more HP to make that work at the end of the day. But yeah, we were able to save about 5 to 6 nodes just using a From Darkness jewel here, which was really, really nice. And then the other thing we ended up adding to our build, of course, is this one right here, our Prism of Belief Diamond. +3 Magma Barrier skills. This is quite expensive for kind of the average player, I guess. 12 to 15 div, I'd say, on average. I was able to snipe this for 4 div, which was kind of insane. I was really happy about that. But yeah, we are able to add that to our setup as well, which is why our damage is off the charts insane right now, and why we are able to scale it to such a high level. I still don't have a level 20 jewel or gem, so we can still even scale it higher, but it's really not necessary. But yeah, so we also added, as I mentioned, Eternal Youth, and we added Zealot's Oath. That way we can use our potions to recover our energy shield, because that was definitely a problem sometimes, because we're soaking up a lot of hits, and sometimes you miss your magma barrier blocks. You end up taking a lot of damage, and just Grim Feast by itself isn't enough to sustain you. So we added Eternal Youth onto our build for that. And Zealot's Oath, again, as I mentioned earlier, we don't really need it. It's just kind of a quality of life thing that we have, that, you know, we don't have to, like, every time we get back into base, just hit the well, right? So you don't really have to have this. It's a small little thing. But yeah. So that's kind of our tree setup right now. I would really like to ideally take a lot of our survivability nodes that we have from our main hand setup and just put them into global setup, so we can have more survivability on our one-shotting build, because that definitely is a kind of an issue sometimes, because bosses don't always open up with a ability that lets you block and one-shot them, right? Or sometimes you might miss, and as a result, you do need a little bit of an HP buffer to just make sure you don't die. So that's kind of like something I would love to be able to do eventually, and see if there's any way to do it. But as it stands, I don't really see much of an option to do so without giving up something major. But as a result, our tree is pretty much in its final state, final phases. Of course, you know, we're going to get more levels, we're going to add more things to this tree, but for the most part, there's nothing going to be significantly changed here anymore, at least from what I can tell. For jewels, as always, we want to maximize area of effect, crit damage, and energy shield for survivability. Now, one thing I do want to mention actually for our tree is that my original video, there was a little bit of a calculation error that I put in the pinned comment to fix. Because I did mention, like, I said Magma Barrier has 6% base chance to crit, but that's not true. The reason why I thought that was because the video that I was working off of, Doer's video, he had a formula that had 6%, but I realized that that is because he took this one, Struck Through, and that adds a 1% base to it. So as a result, we needed to just do a little small change where we, instead of taking this crit damage node right here, we invested that into a crit chance node over here. I don't have it on my build because I have a jewel right here that gives me more crit chance. It gives me just enough, a little bit over actually. It gives us to 236% crit, whereas you need 234% crit to, well, always 100% crit the boss on full HP. So that's kind of a situation that we have there. If you're able to, let's say, get some more crit on these, like if you had Abyss, like increase area of effect, critical damage, energy shield, you know, crit chance node right here, or jewel right here, you probably wouldn't even need this jewel right here. Like, yeah, you could probably have it on this on like that on like 2 jewels and call it a day. So that's kind of what's the situation there and why we have this jewel here. And then we have more crit damage, area effect, energy shield nodes, basically for all of our jewels. I do have some that are just area effect elemental damage just for our mapping setup, because again, as I mentioned, we really just don't need more crit damage at the moment. Like, we're one-shotting everything for our one-shot setup, so you don't need that much. And like I said, I need to figure out what the equilibrium is to where we're not doing too much damage, but at the same time, you know, doing enough damage to one-shot everything. Unfortunately, POB isn't very good right now with offhands, because either A, offhands are bugged in the amount of crit that they do, the crit damage, because when you swap over your offhand, the crit goes crazy, right? And I was watching a Rue video, and he said that your offhand gets a, you know, it gets squared. Your crit damage gets squared on your offhand, and I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that is the case, and that's why we're able to get these high offhand numbers. And I don't think Path of Building has that in its calculations, and Path of Building also can't, from what I can tell, I can't find a way for it to show like crit chance on full life either. And so yeah, Path of Building is not very good at the moment for calculating the amount of damage that we do. Which would be nice, because then again, right there, we can optimize like, okay, well, this is not, you know, we're doing too much damage right now. We can reduce some of this and get more damage on our area farming build. But yeah, so jewels, again, crit damage, crit damage, area effect, and energy shield, ideally on every single jewel, because we can always need more crit area effect, right, for our clear, crit damage for our one-shot setup, and energy shield for our HP and survivability. So that's kind of the setup that we have right now. Again, we still have some fragments of area effect elemental damage for our clearing setup, but yeah. So that's kind of where our tree is at the moment, and you know, it's really kind of finalized right now, in my opinion. Maybe I'll be able to find more optimizations, right? Be able to take off some of these crit damage, but for the most part, it's finalized. There is a world, and I was talking to one of my chat members the other night, twitch.tv/me/Shrew, and they were saying that, you know, energy shield is really, really good at soaking big hits, whereas armor isn't. And when you're playing this build, you're soaking a lot of the small hits with your shield anyways, and what's killing you is your big hits, right? So swapping to full energy shield is also something that I'm thinking about doing for this build to just make it more survivable. Right now, it's still pretty survivable, but it's not like super tanky. You're not going out there and just being able to tank the world. You really do have to be careful about what you're doing and like make sure you're, you know, if you miss a block, for example, miss a magma barrier, I immediately blink out of the vicinity. That way we're not super surrounded by mobs, right? So that's another area that I think we're going to try to optimize on and change and try to find out. But as for the armor energy shield variant, I think this is really the finalized tree. And again, as we level, we can add more to like energy shield, but for the most part, that's kind of about it. As for our gear, as I mentioned earlier, we did a big boo-boo with our weapon. Unfortunately, we got peer pressured, and that was an extra 2 div that I didn't need to spend to get a worse weapon. But right now, we are rocking a armor energy shield helmet, just resists, right? And you want life on everything, ideally. We swapped to an armor energy shield because that will give us more survivability with energy shield. Armor just at the end of the day isn't amazing. We also have the same necklace right here, pretty much. 3 melee skills, attributes to cover our asses for our other skills that aren't Magma Barrier, like our Eye of Winter or Blink or Grim Feast. This is just more survivability. This is also more survivability, provides me with some strength for our weapon. This is just for stats, and it also gives a bit of survivability as well. Gives us cold resist, gives us maximum life. Pretty nice. For gloves, I found that the armor energy shield gloves, just the rolls on those on the market at least, are all really bad. I was not able to find a super high life armor energy shield glove with a decent amount of armor and energy shield as well. So I just swapped out to an energy shield glove. It's still not even that crazy. It's like 116 energy shield, but it's really hard to find one with all of the things that we want and high life, right? So this is the one that we ended up going with. Can still be getting better. For our belt, we got a belt just off the market, high life. Yeah, it's good strength to give us our requirements, and then also more resist, right? And I really want to stop using Trample Toe. This is, it makes our move speed slower, right? Move speed 15% is the maximum right now, and it's after the buff. And as a result, it's just not very comfortable to use. But it gives us so much with a 30% overkill, because it's something that Herald of Ash just doesn't give. It's less damage, it doesn't chain, and also the area of effect is half as big. So when you run Trample Toe, you get to, whenever you Magma Barrier block and you kill stuff in front of you, stuff behind you also ends up dying, which is really important because our build always gets surrounded by enemies. So I can't find a way to take these off, even though I really want to, because that would boost our survivability by a ton and also make it so that we can, get more move speed on our boots. Yeah. And then there's a world where, as I mentioned earlier, our damage is too high right now. So we could take off Preemptive Strike and just put in like a, as I mentioned before, this node right here. Where is it? This one, Parrying Motion, to help us again with our move speed and clear. Something I want to do is, for non-pinnacle bosses, we really don't need Preemptive Strike. Like, for just mapping, this is not necessary at all. So I'd love to get a secondary necklace amulet that we could just slot in whenever we're not mapping. But I'm a poor boy and I haven't been able to get a replacement here. We've just been focusing on other things for our character. So that is our gear right now, and it's for the most part in some pretty finalized phases. And just to clarify, for our second setup, right, for one shot, all you do is just swap your weapon in. Or if you think your survivability is a little bit low, you can do this as well, and that'll increase our energy shield to 4.3k, which isn't a ton, right? But it's better than nothing. It's better than what we had before. So that's kind of what I do when I go boss. I just swap this gear, and then yeah, that's all I do. But yeah, that's the update to the build, and I think this is probably the final video that I'm going to make for like a full-on build guide type of situation for this. If there are any like small tweaks and improvements, maybe I'll decide to make a video, but I think the next video I'll make for this build might just be like me one-shotting Arbiter or something like that. Who knows? But yeah, that's the build. I also will include down below, of course, the max roll build as well as POB. So the max roll build will have this tree right here, right? This is the original tree that we had without our From Nothing jewel. But I also have the tree for the build with the From Nothing jewel on our POB. I don't know why I named it From Darkness. I'll probably change that for the actual link. But this is our build with the From Nothing jewel. And we do have this node right here in case you don't have that extra crit chance jewel. But if you do have a crit chance jewel, you can go ahead and just take this off and slot it like here for extra crit damage, or you could even like take off this node right here for the extra strength if you have enough strength, and then you could do give yourself an extra node to play around with. So kind of flexible what you can do with it. And yeah, this is kind of the finalized tree. I'll leave this in a separate kind of POB link down in the pinned comment below. But that's about it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you want to see more stuff like this, the best way to support the channel is to hit the sub button. And I also stream every single night on twitch.tv/MisoXshiro starting at 10 p.m. PST. So I'd love to see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace.